Umpire.
Umpires, uncompromising, impartial.
Hello and welcome everyone. We have with us today a gentleman who doesn't need an introduction. They say justice delayed is justice denied. But this judge today with us has the reputation of running one of the fastest courtrooms in Indian history. In his Supreme Court desk, he disposed of more than 100 cases in a week. That's a mammoth task and salute to him. Then again, has some of his judgments caused a stir? Has some of his comments and views caused controversy? Has any of his ideas caused divided opinions? Yes, yes, and yes. Come, let's meet the man some call Daredevil,
Justice Markanday Katju.
Hello.
Hello, Justice Katju. How do you do?
Fine.
Well, first of all, thanks for your time. I mean, despite your busy schedule, you have given us time to air your opinions and thoughts about it, and even more kindly that we could do it in a more regular basis. And I hope we make it a platform where your views, your ideas, and your opinions reach among the masses in India. So with that thank you note, let me dive straight into my interview. At the moment we started talking on the phone and we decided to do this show, one thing that I straight away wanted to ask you is this. I mean, you come from generations, 4 or 5 generations of successful lawyers in the country. They were known for their knowledge and strength in jurisprudence, but then your father, Mr. Shivnath Katju, dived into politics and he became MLA in UP Assembly, and he was MLA up till the early 60s, I guess. So also your grandfather, Mr. Kailash Nath Katju, he was a chief minister for Madhya Pradesh. He was also Union Defense and Home Affairs ministers in 2 different occasions. He was also a governor of Orissa and West Bengal, such a colorful political lineage that you got there. And this happened despite them being so acclaimed lawyers and judges as well. So my question to you is, you did grew up seeing and learning from both of them, but then why didn't politics attract you? Or why didn't you dive into politics at some point in your career? At some point.
Well, there are broadly 2 reasons.
Yeah.
Firstly, in India, politics has become very expensive. It has almost become like a business. To contest an election for member of parliament in India often costs about 10 crore rupees or more.
Just for election?
Just for an election of parliament. Wow. And for election to the state legislature, it may be 6 or 7 crores. I don't have that much money.
That's
And the second reason being that, you see, in India, parliamentary democracy largely runs on the basis of caste and religion, which means that when 90% people go to vote, I'm not saying 100%, but 90%, they do not see the merit of the candidate, whether he's a good man or bad man, whether he's educated or uneducated, etc. They just see his caste and religion and vote on that basis, or the caste and religion of the party to which he belongs. Now, casteism and communalism are feudal forces which have to be destroyed if India is to progress. But in India, parliamentary democracy further entrenches them. So, if I enter politics, I will also have to appeal in the name of caste and religion. I will have to give speeches polarizing society, spreading hatred in the name of religion and caste. Well, I'm not prepared to do that. So that
I
is why I'm
understand
not
that,
into
and I do
politics.
respect you for that. I mean, that's a very bold statement, and it also shows your character per se. But just a small interruption on that to ask you, what we have now is a democratic form of government in the country, and we are electing our so to call rulers by means of elections. So, if there is a change to be made at the moment, which could only be caused by elections and democratic parliamentary system, isn't it? Wouldn't it be fair for me to ask you, couldn't you have given a small chance to try that?
I am very pessimistic because uh, when our politicians they go in for elections, and elections take place in India every 6 or 8 months. In some state legislature or the other, in November we are having elections in Bihar, then thereafter Bengal, then Tamil Nadu, and so
Yeah.
on. So the politicians only want to win the next elections, and for that they have to polarize society, spread religious and caste hatred. So I don't see how India can progress with
At
this
all in the system.
system of parliamentary democracy. In
At all.
theory, it may sound very nice, very rosy, parliamentary democracy, the will of the people. But the people in India are largely very backward with feudal mindsets. They see caste and religion as the main forces on the basis of which they vote. So how can India progress with parliamentary elections which runs largely on the basis of caste and religion? In the Indian Constitution, there's a chapter called Fundamental Rights in Part 3 of the
Yes.
Constitution, which lays down what are known as fundamental rights, which are broadly modeled on the US Bill of Rights, which provide for freedom of speech, liberty, equality, freedom of religion, and so on. But these rights only exist on paper. The Constitution is just a piece of paper. Unless there's some body which enforces and upholds and protects those rights, these rights are meaningless. So that body has to be the judiciary.
Right.
Unfortunately, in recent years, what we have seen, the performance of Supreme Court and all, they have largely abandoned their role of protectors and upholders of the rights of the citizens, with the result that gross violation of these rights take place, but judiciary is just, it turns Nelson's eye, turns a blind eye to these illegality. I've written an article which was published in a website called thewire.in,
Yeah.
titled All the Times the Supreme Court Turned Nelson's Eye to Injustice. Please read that article. I've given all instances. Then I have written an article about the Ayodhya verdict in the same publication, thewire.in, titled The Ayodhya Verdict is Based on a Strange Feat of Logic. And a third article in the same publication called The Supreme Court Must Resume Its Role as Protector of the Rights of the People. Please read these three articles. I've given all details that nowadays Supreme Court is not upholding the rights of citizens. The result being that so many people are arrested because they criticize the government, but judiciary
Yeah.
does nothing about it. In Kashmir, the politicians who were arrested on 5th August 2019, when Article 370 was abrogated, they had filed habeas corpus petitions in the Supreme Court. More than 1 year have elapsed. Most of those petitions are still pending, and many of those people are still under detention.
It's quite incidental that you're born just 11 months before independence. So, in a way, you grew up seeing independent India taking shape. And
Yes.
despite your political ideologies and inclinations, you must have had a dream or wish
As to how India would or should shape up, you must have had a dream.
how India would shape up in the next 40, 50, 60 years. But now, we are 70 plus years down the line. And may I ask you, how contented or disappointed are you in seeing what you're seeing today?
Well, give me a little time to reply to this question of yours.
Yes, please.
It's going to take a little time. You see, before the Industrial Revolution, which started in England in early 18th century and then spread all over the world, there were feudal agricultural societies everywhere. And the methods of production in feudal agricultural society were so primitive and backward, like the bullock cart being used for tilling the land, or the horse used for tilling the land in Europe, or buffalo in Vietnam, etc. That very little wealth could be generated by that feudal method of production. And when very little wealth is generated, then only a handful of people can be rich. The rest have to be poor. So hardly 1%, that is the kings and aristocrats and so on, were rich. Remaining 99% people were broadly poor. Because when the cake is so small, very few people can eat it.
Yeah.
Now this situation has drastically changed in the world after the Industrial Revolution, which, as I said, began in Britain in the early 18th century and spread all over the world.
Yeah.
Now the methods of production are so powerful and so big that enough wealth can be generated to give a decent life to everyone. A decent life meaning a life with a good income, with good education for the children, good health care, nourishing food, and so on. Everybody can now enjoy a high standard of living, everybody in the world, because modern industry is so powerful and big that it can generate enough wealth for giving a good livelihood to everybody. That being the unique historical situation which has arisen after the Industrial Revolution, the fact remains that 75% people of the world are poor. Now these 75% people, including most people in India, are demanding that now that we don't have to be poor, why are we being kept poor? See, let me tell you, this world is actually not one world. It consists of two worlds. One is the world of the developed countries, the highly industrialized countries, like the one in which you are living, that is UK, then North America, Europe, Japan, Australia, China. China has also joined the ranks of the highly developed countries. The rest, that is maybe having a population of 75-80% of the world, are the backward, underdeveloped countries. India is also one of them. And therefore, our national aim must be to transform India and uplift it and bring it into the ranks of the highly industrialized countries. Now, what has happened is that we adopted the parliamentary system of democracy in India under our constitution. Now, parliamentary democracy in India runs on very different lines from how it runs in England or America. Here, it largely runs on the basis of caste and religion. As I said, 90% people, when they go to vote, they vote on the basis of caste or religion of the candidate. They don't see whether he's meritorious, good, bad, educated, uneducated. They just see his caste and religion. Because people's mindset in India is very backward. Large, 90% people. And parliamentary democracy further entrenches this because it runs on the basis of caste and communal vote banks. So how can the country progress with the parliamentary democracy in India when it further entrenches feudalism? Caste and religion are basically feudal forces, backward forces, which have to be destroyed if India has to progress. But parliamentary democracy further enforces them and entrenches them. When the politicians vote for elections, they polarize society to get the votes of a particular caste or religion, which means they spread hatred on the basis of religion, caste, and so on. You have seen what has happened in recent years. This present ruling party, the BJP, how it has spread religious hatred against minorities like Muslims, many of whom were lynched and all kinds of atrocities committed against them. So how can the country progress if the leaders are working on feudal lines? We have to have modern-minded leaders. If we want to rapidly industrialize and modernize, we have to have modern-minded leaders. Just like Turkey had Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He transformed Turkey. He abolished the Sharia, burqa, and madrasas and religious clerics. And he said, we have to modernize. Otherwise, Turkey was known as the sick man of Europe. And it was kicked around by all the European powers.
Yeah.
By the Treaty of Sevres of 1920, they were going to partition Turkey. But then Mustafa Kemal, who was an army general, he staged a coup and he said nothing of the sort. He deposed the Sultan and the Khalifa and he modernized Turkey. We have also to do something like that. Like in Japan, they had the Meiji Restoration in 1868. Before that, Japan was run by the shoguns who were feudals and kept Japan backward. But after the Meiji Restoration of 1868, the leaders who came to power, technically the emperor was the ruler, but the real power was in the hand of his advisors.
Yeah.
They were modern-minded people. They invited engineers and scientists from Europe and America to come to Japan, set up engineering colleges, and set up industries. And so within 25 years, Japan was transformed from a backward country into a highly industrialized country.
Yeah.
So it takes just 20, 25 years for a country to become a highly industrialized country, provided the leadership consists of modern-minded people who are determined to modernize and industrialize the nation. But our leadership is feudal. Now, what are they wanting? They want to make a Ram temple. Now, how will constructing a Ram temple in Ayodhya solve the problem of unemployment? The Indian economy is sinking. Over the last 10 months or so, Indian economy is going downhill at a very rapid rate.
That is true, especially in the last few years. But you cannot put all the blame on BJP, I think. I mean, you talked about the communal rights and stuff that happened in the last few years or last many years. But the kind of examples that you put forward, the kind where, after the Second World War, Japan was almost annihilated and came out like a phoenix. And after the First World War in Turkey, are these the kind of dreams you had for India, even when you were like in your 30s and 40s? Is that the way forward that you thought for India?
You see, much depends on the political leadership. They must be modern-minded, patriotic people. But our politicians of all parties, I'm not blaming BJP alone, their only interest is winning the next elections. And they don't really love the people. They are interested in power and pelf. And to win elections, you have to rely on these feudal forces like casteism and communalism.
Yeah.
So how can the country progress with leadership which is feudal-minded, whose mindsets are feudal? They know that Indian people are also backward, with backward mindsets, and things like building the Ram temple in Ayodhya, or cow protection, all this, you whip up religious sentiments, and on that basis you win elections, or on the basis of bashing Pakistan.
In that particular point, I want to ask you something, because just before the last general election, BJP lost in 7 states to opposition parties. It must have given a hope to Congress then that they would come back to power, or at least most people should have thought, including me, that there will be a strong opposition party in the Indian parliament. But BJP alone has secured 51% of the parliament floor. As you rightly said, the 303 seats of 550, and the INC is reduced to under 10%, just 52. I mean, to put it into scenario, even a regional party like DMK from Tamil Nadu has almost half the seats that the entire Indian National Congress has won. Is this a result you anticipated?
Listen, let me explain this. See, after independence, what happened was that Congress was sweeping all the elections. And the reason why it was winning in elections by a thumping majority was this, that the Congress vote bank was Dalits, who were about 20% population, Muslims, who in big states were about 18% population, and upper caste, who were around 20%. So 20 plus 40 plus 80, about 58% people were voting for Congress. This was broadly the caste and religious alliance on the basis of which Congress was sweeping the election, winning almost all seats, because with 58% of the votes, you will sweep, because to win an election, you require about 30-31% votes. You don't even need 50% because others are divided. But with 58%, you will sweep, you win almost every seat. And that is why after independence, after the constitution came to force, Congress was sweeping in almost all states. Now what has happened is, in UP, for instance, the Dalits, the scheduled caste, they have formed their own party called Bahujan Samaj Party, of whose leader is Mayawati. That left the Congress. And after demolition of Babri Masjid in December 1992, Muslims left Congress in UP and joined Mulayam Singh Yadav's Samajwadi Party and Lalu Yadav's RJD in Bihar. And the upper caste, who were also earlier Congress voters, they went over to BJP. So Congress is left with zero votes. You please understand, I mean, voting in India is on the basis of blocks, caste and religious blocks, not on merit of the candidate. All the three blocks on the basis of which Congress used to win elections have left Congress. So they have no votes, and that is why they don't win many seats, except just a very few here and there. It runs on the basis of caste and religious vote banks, not individuals. People vote in whole droves for a particular caste or religion. Now the three caste and religious blocks on the basis of which Congress used to win elections, namely number one Dalits, number two Muslims, and number three upper castes. That means Brahmin and Rajputs and Baniyas and so. All three have abandoned Congress. So where is the vote bank for Congress? Who is going to vote? Whereas for BJP, they rely on Hindu votes, and Hindus are 80% of population of India. So they are going to win all elections for quite some time to come.
It's just a matter of Congress losing the ground, and because of caste and religious things, BJP has stood over. Is that what you say?
Yes, because you see, people do not see that unemployment is growing. People do not see that there is economy is going down. There is lack of health care, lack of nourishment, nothing. They just see that a Ram temple is being built. You know, people are emotional, not rational. 90% in India, people have very backward mindsets, feudal mindsets. They just see that this party is building a Ram temple, this party has given a beating to Pakistan. Those are emotional issues on the basis of which you keep winning elections.
One of the reasons I picked up that question is because after losing the election from Congress perspective and winning at a land scale from BJP, some of the journalists and some of the media were talking about the election voting machine being pampered, or those are the ways that BJP came back to power or came back in a large scale. But from what you say, that's not really the case, and people really voted for BJP. Is that it?
Listen, you must understand that although the word secularism has been mentioned in our constitution, in the Indian constitution, but the ground reality is very different. India is a highly communal country. Most Hindus are communal, and most of them dislike Muslims. And similarly, most Muslims are also communal. And because 80% people in India are Hindus, that gives the BJP a distinct advantage, because it thrives on religious hatred, on promoting hatred of minorities, and doing these gimmicks like building Ram temple. What is Ram temple? It's just a gimmick. I mean, is it going to solve the massive unemployment problem in India? Tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people in India have lost their job within the last 9 months or so.
That's true.
Massive unemployment. So now building a Ram temple will not solve that problem. But this is what is promoted. because that helps you in win the elections.
Before that general election, opposition parties were able to win over BJP. So it looks like people changed their mind over a matter of months. And as you said, the regionalism and communalism and casteism, that's been the curse of India for long time. And that needs a consistent, determined, long-term education among the masses. And apparently, none of the political leaders are inclined towards doing it, which you are trying to spend the rest of your time nowadays to bring up that awareness, and I salute you for that. But there is no mass media to take it out to the masses over there, is it? If a casteism or a communalism or a backward idea is to be gotten rid of from people, what is the best way to do that? You can't make a law and remove casteism from the country.
No, you can't make a law. It can't be removed by making laws.
It needs a consistent education to the people, through education, through the media, from all the leading political figures talking about it and practicing it.
Listen, first of all, you spoke of political leaders, then you spoke of media. Let me tell you about both.
Yeah.
Political leaders who are not in BJP, they are in Congress or some other party, they rely on caste, whereas BJP relies on religion. Now, both are feudal forces. So it's not that the other non-BJP parties are any better. They manipulate some caste alliance, and that is how they won some elections. And as regards the media, 90% Indian media is totally sold out, shameless. They promote religious hatred. They whip up jingoism. Pakistan bashing is a favorite thing for them. So the less said about Indian media, the better. Yes, there are some upright journalists, but most of them are utterly shameless and sold out, and they stir up religious hatred. They do terrible things. So what are you talking about? How were they converted into wicked people? That one terrorist less, one anti-national less. So you massacre people and you get votes. Just like, see, in 1984, the Sikhs were massacred. They have only capability of winning elections. That is all. I am not a communist. I'm not a communist at all. I'm not a member of any communist party.
The Umpire. To stay tuned, subscribe to The Umpire so that you don't miss the next part of this interview.